and the men wondered how any door in the universe could be so vast. Then, very softly and slowly, the acre grew inward at the top, and they saw. Then, very softly and slowly, the acre-great panel began to give inward at the top, and they saw that it was balanced. Donovan slid or somehow propelled himself down or along the jam and rejoined his fellows. And and everyone watched the queer recession of the monstrously carven portal. In this fantasy of prismatic distortion, it moved anomalously in a diagonal way, so that all the rules of matter and perspective everyone watched the queer recession of the monstrously carven portal. In this fantasy of prismatic distortion, it moved anomalously in a diagonal way, so that all the rules of matter and perspective seemed upset. The aperture was black with a darkness almost material. And everyone watched the queer recession of the monstrously carven portal. In this fantasy of prismatic distortion, it moved anomalously in a diagonal way, so that all the rules of matter and perspective seemed upset. The aperture was black with a darkness almost material. And everyone watched the queer recession of the monstrously carven portal. And everyone watched the queer recession of the monstrously carven portal. In this fantasy of prismatic distortion, it moved anomalously in a diagonal way, so that all the rules of matter and perspective seemed upset. In this fantasy of prismatic distortion, it moved anomalously in a diagonal way, so that all the rules of matter and perspective seemed upset. The aperture was black with a darkness almost material. That tenebrousness was indeed a positive quality, for it obscured such parts of the inner walls as ought to have been revealed, and actually burst forth like smoke from its That tenebrousness was indeed a positive quality, for it obscured such parts of the inner walls as ought to have been revealed, and actually burst forth like smoke from its aeon-long imprisonment. That tenebrousness was indeed a positive quality, for it obscured such parts of the inner walls as ought to have been revealed, and actually burst forth like smoke from its aeon-long imprisonment, visibly darkening the sun as it slunk away into the visibly darkening the sun as it slunk away into the shrunken and gibbous sky on flapping membranous wings.
And for those of you watching, this is all original music by Hidden History Radio. You can find it on playlists in our channel.
visibly darkening the sun as it slunk away into the shrunken and gibbous sky on flapping membranous wings. The odor arising from the newly opened depths was intolerable. Deep beneath the surface of the Earth, locked inside rock layers that formed tens of millions of years before humans ever existed, scientists have found something profoundly unsettling. Not fossils, not bones, not ancient tools or ruins. They've found chemistry. Microscopic spheres of exotic metals, scattered across the planet in a global pattern so precise it mirrors the fallout signature of modern nuclear detonations. These particles appear in sediment layers dated to 65 million years ago and earlier, long before cities, long before industry, long before humans. According to everything we believe about history, these materials should not be there. For centuries, humanity has assumed a simple narrative. We are the first technological species on Earth, the first to burn fossil fuels, the first to reshape the atmosphere, the first to split atoms, melt metals, and leave permanent scars. The quick-eared Hawkins thought he heard a nasty slopping sound down there. What if Earth has hosted advanced civilizations before us? What if time erased their cities, their machines, and their bones, but not their industrial fingerprints? And what if we've been misreading those fingerprints as natural phenomena simply because we never imagined they could belong to anyone else? To understand how this question even became possible, we have to rewind to a discovery that changed geology forever. In 1980, a geologist studying limestone formations in Italy noticed something strange. A razor-thin layer of clay separated two massive rock systems, one representing the age of dinosaurs, the other the world that came after. Embedded in that clay was an element almost non-existent in Earth's crust, iridium. The concentration was more than 30 times higher than normal. Iridium is rare on Earth's surface, but abundant in asteroids. The implication was unavoidable. a massive object from space had struck the planet, throwing dust and metal into the atmosphere and altering life on Earth forever. This discovery became the smoking gun for the asteroid impact that ended the reign of the dinosaurs. But it also did something else, something far more disturbing. It proved that Earth preserves evidence. One violent day, one cosmic collision, 65 million years later, its chemical signature remained intact. That realization triggered a dangerous question. If a single catastrophic event could leave such a clear fingerprint after tens of millions of years, what would an industrial civilization leave behind? Cities collapse, steel rusts, concrete crumbles, bones decay, even monuments erode into dust. But chemistry doesn't forget. Energy use alters isotope ratios. Industrial processes create synthetic compounds. Nuclear reactions leave unmistakable signatures that persist for geological timescales. These are not artifacts you display in a museum. They are signals written into the planet itself. This line of thinking led scientists to an idea that sounds like science fiction, but is rooted firmly in geology: the Silurian hypothesis. Named after a fictional ancient species from Doctor Who, the hypothesis asks a deceptively simple question. If an advanced technological civilization existed on Earth millions of years ago, would we even know it? At first glance, the answer seems obvious. Of course we would. Civilization leaves ruins. Except deep time doesn't care. Earth is 4.5 billion years old. The entire span of human industrial activity represents a fraction so small it barely registers. If a civilization like ours lasted 10,000 years and vanished completely, that interval would represent far less than a rounding error in Earth's geological record. Finding it would be like searching for a single torn page in a library containing millions of books, most of which have already been shredded. But here's the catch. Civilization doesn't just leave structures, it leaves planetary scars. Every technological society must consume energy. That energy consumption alters atmospheric chemistry. It changes carbon cycles, ocean acidity, and global temperature patterns. It produces waste, materials that nature does not readily recycle. Those effects don't vanish when buildings fall. They fossilize. We already know this because we are doing it right now. Humanity has flooded the atmosphere with carbon dioxide at a rate unmatched in Earth's known history.
Everyone
We've
listened,
created plastics
and everyone
that
was
fragment
listening
into
still
microscopic
when it
particles
lumbered
and spread across
slobberingly
every
into
ecosystem
sight.
on the planet. We've detonated nuclear weapons that produced radioactive isotopes with half-lives measured in tens of thousands of years. Future geologists won't need statues or cities to know we were here. They'll see us in the rocks. But what if previous civilizations didn't use our technologies? What if their materials decayed differently? What if their energy sources weren't fossil fuels? What if their industrial markers look natural simply because we don't recognize them as artificial? Once scientists started asking these questions, the geological record began to look strange, because Earth's history is full of gaps. The fossil record is often described as incomplete. That's an understatement. It's more like a shredded manuscript. Entire chapters are missing, long stretches of time where evolutionary transitions should appear, yet don't. Instead, life seems to jump forward in sudden bursts. This is the most famous example, the Cambrian explosion. Around 540 million years ago, complex life appears almost out of nowhere. In geological terms, it's instantaneous. Before this point, the fossil record is dominated by simple organisms. After it, the oceans teem with creatures possessing eyes, skeletons, complex nervous systems, and specialized organs. Evolutionary theory says this should have taken tens of millions of years, but the rocks don't show that. They show a switch being flipped. And the Cambrian explosion is not unique. Throughout Earth's history, life repeatedly follows the same pattern. Long periods of relative stability, interrupted by sudden disruptions, mass extinctions, rapid environmental shifts, abrupt biological innovations that appear fully formed. Scientists usually explain this away as preservation bias. Soft-bodied organisms don't fossilize well. Geological processes destroy evidence. Environmental conditions affect what gets preserved. All true, but not sufficient. Some gaps are too clean, too synchronized, too global. They coincide with massive shifts in atmospheric composition, ocean chemistry, and global temperature patterns that suggest coordinated planetary change rather than slow natural drift. Consider the Great Oxygenation Event, roughly 2 billion years ago. Oxygen levels in Earth's atmosphere rose dramatically, poisoning much of the existing biosphere while enabling the emergence of new life forms. The standard explanation credits photosynthetic microbes releasing oxygen gradually, yet the timing is razor sharp. The transition isn't smooth, it's abrupt. Earth's chemistry was fundamentally rewritten. The pattern resembles what happens when an advanced system intervenes in a planetary process at scale. And this is where the Silurian hypothesis stops being philosophical and starts becoming uncomfortable. Because the rocks don't just show biological change, they show industrial-style chemistry. Carbon isotope ratios appear in ancient layers that match what we see today when fossil fuels are burned en masse. Sudden spikes in greenhouse gases appear in ice cores long before humans existed. Metallic microspheres, identical to those produced by high-temperature industrial processes, are embedded in sediments millions of years old. These are not isolated anomalies. They appear globally, repeatedly, and once you start looking, they don't stop. Which raises a question that geology was never designed to answer. What if Earth has experienced cycles of technological dominance? What if civilizations rose, reshaped the planet, collapsed, and were swallowed by time? And what if we're standing on the latest layer of a story that has happened before? If that sounds impossible, remember this: the planet has already proven it can preserve the evidence. It just doesn't preserve the parts we expect.
Once scientists accepted that industrial activity leaves permanent chemical fingerprints, the geological record became impossible to ignore. Because Earth doesn't just remember impacts and extinctions, it remembers energy use. Modern industry leaves behind unmistakable isotopic patterns. When humans burn coal, oil, and natural gas, we release carbon that has been locked underground for hundreds of millions of years. That ancient carbon carries a specific isotopic ratio, lighter than carbon produced by modern biological processes. That signature doesn't disappear. It becomes embedded in tree rings, ice layers, ocean sediments, and eventually stone. Millions of years from now, future scientists will see a sharp deviation in carbon ratios, marking the moment industrial civilization began. In other words, we are writing our own timestamp into the planet, which is why a discovery buried deep in ancient rock layers triggered alarm. At the boundary marking the largest mass extinction in Earth's history, the event that wiped out nearly all life 252 million years ago, geologists found carbon isotope ratios that look disturbingly familiar. They match fossil fuel combustion. The Permian-Triassic extinction, known as the Great Dying, erased 96% of marine species and 70% of terrestrial life. It nearly sterilized the planet. Traditional explanations focus on massive volcanic eruptions and runaway climate feedbacks, but the carbon signal tells a different story. The isotopic shift suggests a sudden release of carbon on a scale equivalent to burning every known fossil fuel reserve on Earth within a geologically brief window. That isn't gradual volcanism. That's industrial-scale energy release. And it wasn't a one-off. Similar isotope anomalies appear at multiple extinction boundaries throughout Earth's history. Each time, the same pattern emerges: a sudden spike in atmospheric carbon, rapid warming, ocean acidification, collapse of ecosystems, then silence. The planet recovers. Life diversifies again. The slate resets. The pattern is eerily consistent. Ice cores drilled from Antarctica provide even more unsettling evidence. These cores preserve tiny bubbles of air, capturing atmospheric composition over hundreds of thousands of years with astonishing precision. Within that record, scientists have identified repeated episodes of abrupt greenhouse gas increases that closely resemble what humanity is doing today. Carbon dioxide spikes rapidly, methane surges, temperatures climb. Then, after thousands of years, the signals fade. Natural climate cycles don't behave this way. They oscillate, they drift, they respond gradually to orbital changes and solar variations. These spikes look engineered. They rise too fast, they stabilize too cleanly, and they appear alongside chemical markers that suggest large-scale atmospheric manipulation. The conclusion is uncomfortable. Either Earth repeatedly experiences natural industrial-scale events we don't understand, or intelligent agents were altering the planet long before humans appeared. The physical evidence doesn't stop with gases. In multiple locations across the globe, geologists have discovered microscopic metallic spheres embedded in sediment layers far older than human metallurgy. These spheres are composed of titanium, nickel, and rare earth elements. They are perfectly rounded, uniform in size, and chemically identical to particles produced by high-temperature industrial furnaces. They are not meteorites. Meteoric debris contains irregular structures, oxidation patterns, and isotopic ratios distinct from refined metal. These spheres show signs of controlled melting and rapid cooling, the exact conditions found in advanced manufacturing. They appear in layers dated to tens of millions of years ago. The distribution is global, not localized, not random, worldwide, as if something was producing them everywhere at once. Similar anomalies appear in deep ocean sediment cores, metallic particles scattered across the seafloor in concentrations that suggest atmospheric dispersal. Not a single impact, not a volcanic plume. Multiple sources, operating simultaneously. The deeper scientists looked, the more the line between natural and artificial began to blur. Then came the plastics. Plastic may be humanity's most permanent legacy. Long after our buildings collapse and our bones decay, microscopic fragments of polymer will remain embedded in Earth's sediments. Plastic degrades slowly, very slowly. In deep ocean basins or frozen environments, it could persist for millions of years. That makes it an ideal geological marker. Future scientists will see a sharp transition. No plastic, then suddenly plastic everywhere. The Anthropocene, written in polymer. But recent sediment analyses revealed something that shouldn't exist. In remote ocean basins untouched by modern pollution, scientists found microscopic particles resembling synthetic polymers in layers millions of years old. These particles share the same hallmarks as modern plastic: resistance to chemical breakdown, non-natural molecular chains, structural features that do not occur in biology or geology. They appear, disappear, then reappear again in later layers, distinct episodes separated by millions of years, as if plastic or something very much like it was invented, used globally, and then vanished more than once. Advanced analysis revealed something even stranger. Some of these ancient polymers are better than ours. They show enhanced durability, radiation resistance, and thermal stability beyond modern materials science. These weren't crude experiments. They were optimized, engineered. Ice cores drilled from Antarctica contain similar particles, perfectly preserved in ancient ice. The molecular structures remain intact, unchanged across immense spans of time. Either nature can spontaneously produce perfect synthetic polymers under unknown conditions, or someone else figured out plastic long before we did. Rock formations in Australia add another layer to the mystery. What were once labeled unusual mineral deposits turned out, under closer inspection, to be degraded synthetic compounds, complex molecular architectures that require precise manufacturing. Radiometric dating places them millions of years before humans, yet they show no signs of expected decay. Time simply failed to erase them. And if plastics can survive geological time, so can something far more dangerous: nuclear signatures. In 1972, scientists studying uranium ore in Gabon discovered something that forced physicists to rewrite textbooks. They found evidence of sustained nuclear chain reactions that occurred naturally 2 billion years ago.
Squeezed its
The Oklo natural reactors proved that nuclear fission can occur without human intervention under extremely specific conditions. But that discovery also revealed something crucial. Nuclear reactions leave permanent scars. Isotopic ratios created by fission are unmistakable, and they last forever. So scientists began to look, and they found signatures that don't fit Oklo. Uranium deposits in Central Asia contain isotope ratios identical to those produced by nuclear weapons testing. These ratios appear in rock layers dated to 50 million years ago. Not 2 billion, not natural reactors, weapons-grade signatures. Similar isotopic patterns have been identified on multiple continents, concentrated, precise, too uniform to be random. The distribution suggests coordinated nuclear activity across the planet. Ice cores from Greenland contain radioactive isotopes that do not occur naturally anywhere on Earth. These isotopes require controlled neutron flux and advanced reactor design. They appear in distinct layers, multiple episodes: rise, detonation, silence. Ocean sediments contain traces of plutonium embedded in layers corresponding to extinction events. Plutonium does not exist naturally. It must be created. The quantities found would require thousands of detonations. The implications are staggering. If these signatures are real, and the chemistry says they are, then nuclear technology existed on Earth long before humanity, and it may have ended civilizations more than once. The nuclear evidence doesn't exist in isolation. It aligns with atmospheric disruptions, mass extinctions, synthetic materials, and climate anomalies. A repeating pattern emerges. Civilization rises, energy consumption spikes, environmental systems destabilize, technology escalates, then collapse. The planet resets. But the most unsettling part is this: some of these ancient civilizations appear to understand what was coming, because alongside the evidence of collapse, scientists are finding signs of preparation.
The deeper scientists dig into Earth's past, the harder it becomes to maintain the illusion that all planetary changes were accidental. Because pollution is sloppy, engineering is not. Natural processes leave noisy signatures, irregular patterns, uneven distributions, chaotic timelines. Industrial activity leaves precision, ratios that repeat, thresholds that are crossed deliberately, interventions that begin and end abruptly. And nowhere is that distinction clearer than in Earth's atmosphere. The atmosphere is not just air, it is an archive. Every major event in Earth's history is written into its chemical composition. Volcanic eruptions leave sulfur spikes, asteroid impacts scatter rare metals, forest fires alter carbon ratios, the rise of photosynthesis changed oxygen forever. This record is so sensitive that scientists can identify individual volcanic eruptions that happened thousands of years ago, which means large-scale atmospheric manipulation should be impossible to hide. And yet, that's exactly what appears in ancient samples. Ice cores from Antarctica and Greenland contain repeated episodes where
Of the 6
atmospheric
men who
composition
never reached the
shifts
ship,
far
he
beyond
thinks
what
2
natural
perished
climate
of pure
cycles can
fright
explain.
in that accursed
These
instant.
shifts are not limited to greenhouse gases. They involve oxygen, nitrogen, and trace compounds that do not form naturally in significant quantities. Some ancient air samples show oxygen concentrations far higher than any known biological process could sustain. Others show engineered ratios that would enhance combustion efficiency and industrial heat processes. These weren't random, they were optimized. Gas bubbles trapped in amber, solidified tree resin that can preserve ancient air for over 100 million years, contain atmospheric samples that defy known Earth chemistry. Oxygen levels in these samples reach 35%, but the isotope ratios don't match natural photosynthetic enrichment. They match artificial separation. To achieve that composition would require removing carbon dioxide at massive scale, while injecting purified oxygen faster than ecosystems could naturally produce it. That's not evolution, that's atmospheric engineering. Deep ice cores reveal something even more unsettling. Periods where Earth's entire atmospheric composition appears to have been restructured, not just tweaked. Nitrogen isotope ratios indicate large-scale processing of the planet's primary atmospheric component. Nitrogen makes up 78% of the air we breathe. Altering it requires planetary-scale machinery. The modified atmospheres appear designed to serve technology as much as biology. Enhanced combustion, reduced corrosion, optimized chemical
and you guys
reactions,
are worried about AI
conditions
taking
ideal
over the
for
planet.
heavy industry. In other words, Earth's atmosphere may have been tuned to support civilization. Some atmospheric compounds found in ancient samples do not exist anywhere else in the solar system. Their molecular structures appear optimized for multiple functions simultaneously: heat retention, radiation shielding, and chemical stability. These compounds would have protected surface life from solar flares and cosmic radiation while stabilizing climate during periods of natural cooling. That level of multi-purpose design suggests intelligence, and it wasn't always successful. Some atmospheric modifications appear abruptly, linger for a few thousand years, then vanish just as quickly. These failed interventions suggest experimentation, trial and error, learning through planetary risk. And then there are the atmospheres that appear incompatible with life as we know it. Samples from certain periods contain gas compositions that would be toxic to modern organisms, but ideal for entirely different biochemistries. This suggests that some ancient civilizations may not have been human-like at all. They may have engineered Earth's atmosphere to support life forms that no longer exist, or life forms that were designed. If that sounds extreme, consider this. Life on Earth has already survived under conditions radically different from today. High oxygen, low oxygen, extreme heat, global glaciation, acidic oceans. Earth doesn't just adapt, it is modified. Which brings us to the most violent markers in the geological record: mass extinctions. 5 times in Earth's history, life has nearly been wiped out. Each event eliminated the majority of species on the planet. Each reshaped the trajectory of evolution. These extinctions are usually attributed to natural disasters: asteroids, volcanoes, climate shifts. But some extinction patterns don't behave like natural disasters. The Permian-Triassic extinction, the Great Dying, shows a level of selectivity that is difficult to explain. Species with similar ecological roles had wildly different survival outcomes. Some organisms that should have been resilient vanished, while fragile species endured. Natural catastrophes do not discriminate that way. Weapons do. Rock layers from extinction boundaries contain traces of synthetic toxins, compounds that disrupt specific biochemical pathways.
The thing cannot be described.
Do not occur naturally.
There is no language for such abysms of shrieking and immemorial lunacy.
Such cannot deploy targeted compounds across the entire planet at once. Biological weapons can. Ocean sediments from extinction periods contain microscopic particles resembling engineered microorganisms. These structures show signs of artificial genetic manipulation, not natural evolution. They appear abruptly, spread rapidly, then disappear. The fossil record shows new species appear almost immediately after these extinction events, fully formed, already adapted to the new environment. That is not how evolution works, unless the replacements were prepared in advance. The Ordovician extinction, the Devonian extinction, and others show
There is
similar
no
patterns,
language for such
targeted
abysms of
elimination
shrieking
followed
and
by
immemorial
rapid
lunacy.
biological turnover. It looks less like chaos and more like ecological restructuring. And then there's the most famous extinction of all, the event that ended the dinosaurs. The asteroid impact is real, the crater exists, the iridium layer is undeniable, but the details don't quite add up. Isotope ratios within the impact materials show anomalies inconsistent with a purely natural collision. Some data suggests energy
The
inputs
thing
beyond
cannot be
gravitational
described.
impact,
There is
patterns
no
consistent with
language for such
propulsion or
abysms of
detonation.
shrieking and
In other
immemorial
words,
lunacy.
the asteroid may not have been entirely accidental. If true, it implies the use of space-based technology capable of redirecting celestial objects, a planetary reset button. And it wouldn't be the only evidence of orbital intervention. Certain extinction layers contain particles formed only under extreme energy conditions occurring high in the atmosphere. These particles suggest directed energy weapons operating from orbit, which raises a chilling possibility. What if some mass extinctions were not accidents, but decisions? Clearing ecological space, removing dominant species, reshaping the biosphere. If that sounds monstrous, remember this: civilizations reshape their environments, sometimes violently. Which brings us to Antarctica. Beneath more than 2 miles of ice lies one of the most stable archives on Earth. Layer upon layer of snow compressed into ice, preserving an uninterrupted record of atmospheric history. Deep drilling projects have begun accessing ice far older than previously thought. Ice formed when Antarctica was warm, green, and temperate. Ground-penetrating radar surveys have revealed geometric structures beneath the ice, patterns too regular, too extensive, and too precise to be natural. These formations stretch for hundreds of miles. They are aligned, they are symmetrical, they are artificial. Electromagnetic surveys indicate materials beneath the ice with properties unlike any known natural mineral. These materials appear engineered to withstand extreme pressure, cold, and geological stress. Some structures appear designed to survive the formation of the ice sheet itself, which leads to an extraordinary hypothesis. Antarctica may not have frozen naturally. The chemical composition of the ice suggests rapid cooling, too rapid for known natural mechanisms. This raises the possibility that the ice sheet was engineered, a deliberate burial, a preservation method. If you wanted to erase a civilization from the surface while preserving its record, there would be no better solution. Ice stops erosion. Ice stops decay. Ice locks history in place. And Antarctica isn't alone. Deep beneath continental crusts, mineral deposits reveal extraction patterns inconsistent with natural geology. Rare earth elements appear concentrated in ways that suggest industrial mining. Organic samples beneath Antarctic sediments show DNA sequences with artificial markers, genetic modifications designed for industrial and agricultural purposes. Some organisms appear engineered for low light, extreme cold, and radiation resistance, built to thrive in industrial environments, built to serve. Which brings us to a disturbing realization. Some ancient civilizations didn't just modify the planet, they merged with it. Their technologies became geological. Their systems became
Once the possibility of ancient planetary engineering is taken seriously, a far more unsettling question follows naturally. What if some of those systems never shut down? Because not all technology is loud, not all infrastructure rusts, and not all intelligence requires cities. The most advanced systems ever conceived by humans are designed to be autonomous, self-regulating, self-correcting, able to operate without supervision for decades or centuries. Now imagine a civilization millions of years older. Their technology would not resemble ours.
It would not flash lights or hum with machinery. It would operate quietly, integrated into natural systems so deeply that it would become indistinguishable from geology itself. And this is where the evidence becomes deeply uncomfortable. Across the planet, scientists have documented geological monitoring networks embedded throughout Earth's crust. These systems manifest as strange, repeating seismic patterns that do not correspond to tectonic activity. They are too regular, too responsive, too adaptive. Certain fault lines release pressure in small, precisely timed events that prevent larger catastrophic earthquakes. Volcanic systems show pressure regulation behaviors that defy current models of magma dynamics. Eruptions that should happen don't. Others occur at moments that relieve planetary stress with minimal surface
I'm getting
damage.
so fed up with ChatGPT
This is
tonight.
not how geology behaves naturally. It looks managed. Climate records show similar anomalies. Earth's climate has remained remarkably stable across periods when it should not have been. Solar output variations, orbital shifts, and cosmic radiation changes should have driven extreme temperature swings. Instead, the planet repeatedly snaps back into habitable ranges. Not slowly, precisely. Ocean circulation systems show signs of intervention as well. Deep currents that regulate global temperature shift in ways that counteract destabilizing trends. Chemical buffers appear in ocean sediments during periods of rapid acidification, stabilizing marine ecosystems just before collapse. These corrections occur too fast to be explained by natural feedback loops alone. It looks like someone is keeping Earth within operational limits. If that sounds absurd, consider this. Modern spacecraft are already capable of autonomous decision-making. Artificial intelligence systems can monitor environments, predict failures, and intervene without human input. Now scale that concept across geological time. A civilization facing inevitable collapse might design systems not to save itself, but to preserve the planet. To ensure that intelligence could arise again, and again, and again. Evidence for such guardian systems appear throughout Earth's deep history. Certain mineral formations contain crystalline structures that behave less like rocks and more like devices. These crystals encode information in their lattice structures, mathematical relationships too complex to arise randomly. They respond to electromagnetic fields. They store memory. They alter their internal structure when stimulated. In effect, they compute. These crystalline formations exist deep underground, often near geothermal gradients or radioactive deposits, natural energy sources capable of powering systems indefinitely. Some form networks stretching for miles, even continents, communicating through seismic vibrations and electromagnetic coupling. They are not static. They are active, and they appear to be monitoring Earth itself. Analysis suggests these systems track atmospheric composition, biological activity, seismic stress, and radiation flux. Their responses correlate with large-scale environmental adjustments. They may regulate volcanic activity, stabilize climate, manage tectonic stress. In other words, Earth may be running on infrastructure built by intelligence that no longer exists biologically. This idea would have sounded insane a century ago. Today, it's merely uncomfortable. Because similar patterns appear in biology. Evolution does not always move blindly. Certain critical traits emerge with suspicious timing and precision. Neurological complexity, tool use, language capacity, abstract reasoning. These appear not as smooth gradients, but as sudden leaps. Genetic analysis reveals modifications in human DNA that are difficult to explain through natural selection alone. Changes affecting cognition, toxin resistance, and metabolic efficiency appear clustered in time, as if intelligence was being encouraged, not forced, guided subtly. And this guidance may extend beyond biology. Some of the most important technological breakthroughs in human history arrived exactly when they were needed. Key discoveries occur at moments of existential pressure. Energy shortages, environmental crises, communication bottlenecks. The timing is uncanny. Almost as if someone wanted us to survive, but not advance too fast. Too fast is dangerous. The geological record shows that. Some ancient sites appear deliberately designed as future teaching tools. Structures that reveal their purpose only when observed with sufficiently advanced technology. Radioactive decay patterns that encode mathematical constants. Mineral arrangements that illustrate physical laws. Astronomical alignments that function as time markers. These are not monuments. They are lessons, accessible only to civilizations capable of understanding them, which suggests intent, guidance without interference, preparation without control. But the guardians, if that's what they are, may not be alone. Deep ocean installations discovered in abyssal trenches contain communication systems still transmitting signals. These signals are not random noise. They follow structured modulation patterns consistent with automated reporting. Some transmissions appear to monitor Earth's biosphere. Others track technological development. A few appear to be listening, and occasionally responding. There is evidence that these monitoring systems communicate with installations beyond Earth. Ancient orbital platforms detected in stable gravitational positions show signs of continuous operation. They occupy locations that require precise knowledge of orbital mechanics and long-term planning. Some are positioned to watch the sun. Others track near-Earth objects. A few appear to monitor us. Asteroid trajectories show subtle deviations that prevented catastrophic impacts during critical periods of evolution. The adjustments are precise enough to suggest intentional deflection. Solar activity data indicates shielding effects during periods of intense solar radiation. Events that should have stripped Earth's atmosphere. Something intervened. Magnetic field anomalies appear during geomagnetic reversals, reinforcing Earth's protective field just long enough to prevent atmospheric collapse. These are not coincidences. They are safeguards, which raises an unsettling implication. Human civilization may not have survived this long on its own. We may have been protected, allowed to develop, tested. And now the pattern suggests we are approaching a threshold. Previous civilizations reached similar points. Rapid technological acceleration, environmental stress, weaponization of advanced science, energy consumption spiraling beyond control. Each time the result was collapse. But this time is different. Because we know. We have access to the evidence they left behind. And more importantly, some of the systems they built appear to be waiting.
not to save us, but to see what we choose.
Once the possibility of planetary guardian systems is considered, another unsettling question emerges. If ancient civilizations anticipated their own collapse, what would they leave behind? Not monuments, not cities, not warnings carved into stone. They would leave information, but not in ways that decay. Every human archive we've ever built is fragile. Paper burns, stone erodes, digital storage fails in decades. Even our most durable media will not survive millions of years. An advanced civilization would know this, so if they wanted to speak to the future, they would not use language. They would use physics. Throughout Earth's geological record, researchers are finding what appear to be deliberately encoded information systems, messages written not in words, but in matter itself. Certain mineral deposits contain isotope ratios arranged in mathematically precise sequences. These ratios are statistically impossible to occur naturally. They encode prime numbers, geometric constants, and physical relationships that are universally recognizable to any advanced intelligence. These are not decorative anomalies, they are signals. Some are embedded in uranium decay chains, using half-life ratios as a timing mechanism. Others are encoded in crystal lattice defects, microscopic irregularities arranged with intentional spacing. The message medium is geology itself, and geology does not forget. Ice cores contain chemical compositions that appear deliberately modified to preserve information. Trace gases arranged in repeating patterns that correspond to mathematical functions. These patterns persist for hundreds of thousands of years, readable only to civilizations capable of advanced chemical analysis. In other words, the messages unlock only when the listener is ready. Ocean sediments contain microscopic particles arranged in spatial distributions that encode data through density variation. When mapped properly, they reveal complex equations describing energy systems, orbital mechanics, and climate stabilization methods. These are not accidental deposits, they are archives. Some message systems appear global. Information is split across continents, oceans, and hemispheres, requiring planetary-scale collaboration to decode fully. No single location contains the entire message. This ensures redundancy, and it ensures that no emerging civilization could accidentally misuse the knowledge too early. The content of these messages is not philosophical, it is practical. Warnings appear repeatedly. Environmental collapse, resource exhaustion, feedback loops that spiral out of control, technologies that destabilize civilizations faster than they can mature socially. The tone is not judgmental, it is instructional. Some messages contain solutions, methods for stabilizing climate systems, managing energy sustainably, and avoiding extinction-level cascades. But access to these solutions appears conditional. The information reveals itself progressively, only when a civilization demonstrates the capacity to understand the consequences of its actions, which suggests something chilling. The messages were not meant to save everyone. They were meant to filter. Some message systems appear to be updated, layers added over time, contributions from multiple civilizations separated by millions of years, each adding lessons learned from failure. A cumulative archive. A civilization does not speak alone. It speaks as part of a lineage. Deep cave systems contain crystalline structures that store vast quantities of information using quantum scale encoding. These crystals remain stable across geological time and can be read only by technologies capable of manipulating quantum states. These are not passive storage devices. They respond. They change state when interrogated. They adapt their output based on the capabilities of the observer. In effect, they teach. Some encoded information appears to be dormant. waiting for specific technological milestones to be reached before becoming accessible. When decoded prematurely, the data appears as noise. When decoded correctly, it unfolds. The implications are staggering. Previous civilizations were not merely documenting their existence, they were guiding the future. But the guidance is subtle. The thing cannot be described. There is no language for such abysms of shrieking and immemorial lunacy, such eldritch contradictions. Why the sound of the water against the vessel's sides became so unendurable to me that I stopped my ears with cotton. Johansen, thank God, did not know quite all, even though he saw the city and the thing. But I shall never sleep calmly again when I think of the horrors that lurk ceaselessly behind life in time and in space, and of those unhallowed blasphemies from elder stars which dream beneath the sea, known and favored by a nightmare cult, ready and eager to loose them on the world whenever another earthquake shall heave their monstrous stone city again to the sun and air. Johansen's voyage had begun just as
Excuse me.
There was some peculiarly abominable quality about them, which made their destruction seem almost a duty, and Johansen shows ingenuous wonder at the charge of ruthlessness brought against his party during the proceedings of the Court of Inquiry. Then, driven ahead by curiosity in their captured yacht under Johansen's command, the men sight a great stone pillar sticking out of the sea, and in south latitude 47 degrees 9 minutes, west longitude 126 degrees 43, come upon a coastline of mingled mud, ooze, and weedy cyclopean masonry, which can be nothing less than the tangible substance of Earth's supreme terror, the nightmare corpse city of Riley, that was built in measureless eons behind history by the vast, loathsome shapes that seeped down from the dark stars. There lay great Cthulhu and his hordes, hidden in green, slimy vaults and sending out at last, after cycles incalculable, the thoughts that spread fear to the dreams of the sensitive and called imperiously to the faithful to come on a pilgrimage of liberation and restoration. All this Johansen did not suspect, but God knows he soon saw enough. I suppose that only a single mountaintop, the hideous monolith-crowned citadel whereon great Cthulhu was buried, actually emerged from the waters. When I think of the extent of all that may be brooding down there, I almost wish to kill myself forthwith. Johansen and his men were awed by the cosmic majesty of this dripping Babylon of elder daemons, and must have guessed without guidance that it was nothing of this or of any sane planet. Awe at the unbelievable size of the greenish stone blocks, at the dizzying height of the great carven monolith, and at the stupefying identity of the colossal statues and bas-reliefs, with the queer image found in the shrine on the Alert, is poignantly visible in every line of the mate's frightened description. Without knowing what futurism is like, Johansen achieved something very close to it when he spoke of the city. For instead of describing any definite structure or building, he dwells only on broad impressions of vast angles and stone surfaces, surfaces too great to belong to anything right or proper for this earth, and impious with horrible images and hieroglyphs. I mention his talk about angles because it suggests something Wilcox had told me of his awful dreams. He had said that the geometry of the dream place he saw was abnormal, non-Euclidean, and loathsomely redolent of spheres and dimensions apart from ours. Now, an unlettered seaman felt the same thing whilst gazing at the terrible reality. Johansen and his men landed at a sloping mud bank on this monstrous acropolis and clambered slipperily up over Titan oozy blocks which could have been no mortal staircase. The very sun of heaven seemed distorted when viewed through the polarizing miasma welling out from this sea-soaked perversion, and twisted menace and suspense lurked leeringly in those crazily elusive angles of carven rock where a second glance shewed concavity after the first shewed convexity.
Something very like fright had come over all the explorers before anything more definite than rock and ooze and weed was seen. Each would have fled had he not feared the scorn of the others, and it was only half-heartedly that they searched, vainly as it proved, for some portable souvenir to bear away. It was Rodriguez, the Portuguese, who climbed up the foot of the monolith and shouted of what he had found. The rest followed him and looked curiously at the immense carved door with the now familiar squid dragon bas-relief. It was, Johansen said, like a great barn door, and they all felt that it was a door because of the ornate lintel, threshold, and jambs around it, though they could not decide whether it lay flat like a trapdoor or slantwise like an outside cellar door. As Wilcox would have said, the geometry of the place was all wrong. One could not be sure that the sea and the ground were horizontal, hence the relative position of everything else seemed phantasmally variable.
Bryden pushed at the stone in several places without result. Then Donovan felt over it delicately around the edge, pressing each point separately as he went. He climbed interminably along the grotesque stone molding. That is, one would call it climbing if the thing was not, after all, horizontal. And the men wondered how any door in the universe could be so vast. Then, very softly and slowly, the acre-great panel began to give inward at the top, and they saw that it was balanced. Donovan slid or somehow propelled himself down or along the jamb and rejoined his fellows, and everyone watched the queer recession of the monstrously carven portal. In this fantasy of prismatic distortion, it moved anomalously in a diagonal way, so that all the rules of matter and perspective seemed upset. The aperture was black with a darkness almost material. That tenebrousness was indeed a positive quality, for it obscured such parts of the inner walls as ought to have been revealed, and actually burst forth like smoke from its aeon-long imprisonment,
visibly darkening the sun as it slunk away into the shrunken and gibbous sky on flapping membranous wings. The odor arising from the newly opened depths was intolerable, and at length the quick-eared Hawkins thought he heard a nasty slopping sound down there. Everyone listened, and everyone was listening still when it lumbered slobberingly into sight and gropingly squeezed its gelatinous green immensity through the black doorway into the tainted outside air of that poison city of madness. Poor Johansen's handwriting almost gave out when he wrote of this. Of the 6 men who never reached the ship, he thinks 2 perished of pure fright in that accursed instant. The thing cannot be described. There is no language for such abysms of shrieking and immemorial lunacy, such eldritch contradictions of all matter, force, and cosmic order. A mountain walked or stumbled. God, what wonder that across the earth a great architect went mad, and poor Wilcox waved with fever in that telepathic instant.
All right, we're done for tonight. That's over 6 hours, so. We're done. You'll have a good one. See you tomorrow. And don't forget your free link for the Sora watermark remover that's in there. And, you guys can help us out and donate to our PayPal. software is expensive, so are new computers. Thank you very much, guys. I'll see you on the next one.